going to do today is look at the second verse of Psalm 23, and we're going to look at the first part of it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. But the contemporary English for that is, He lets me lie down in green pastures. We need to look at the context for these words because that's really important. First of all, think about something. Green pastures are not easy to find in dry, arid lands like Israel and Jordan. So think about the role of the shepherd again. Here's a guy or a girl who has to know seeds. He has to be a horticulturalist. He has to be able to go out and study the land and figure out how he's going to put a seed in that land, especially that sandy soil, and get it to grow so that he can get some green grass. He also has to be able to move water from point A to point B. He's got to be able to build irrigation ditches. See, a shepherd is also a farmer, an irrigator, because you wouldn't even have green pastures in the first place without somebody making sure that they're there. And you got to keep other sheep out of those pastures. So somehow you got to build a perimeter. So man, you got to be a strong person so you can build rock walls, because that's what they did. And so the life of a shepherd was a very difficult life with a lot of major responsibility. Now here's another thing. Think about a sheep. It's not easy to make a sheep lie down if that sheep doesn't really want to. I love a book written by a fellow named Philip Keller. He spent many years as a shepherd of sheep, and he wrote this classic book called A Shepherd Looks at the 23rd Psalm. And in the third chapter, he specifically addresses what it takes for a shepherd to have his sheep lie down in green pastures. And Keller goes on to explain that there have to be 4 basic needs met among the sheep. First of all, the sheep must not feel afraid, or he's not going to lie down. The sheep must not be experiencing any tension among the other sheep, or she will not lie down. The third one is the sheep must be free from pests that aggravate, like ticks and parasites and fleas and flies. And then number 4, the sheep must not be hungry. If these 4 needs are not met, that sheep is not going to lie down. So once again, you realize the important role that the shepherd plays, because again, these 4 basic needs of a sheep cannot be met without painstaking effort by the shepherd. We're talking 24/7, right? Well, guess what? We humans are the same way. We need to be comfortable, don't we? We need to be free from fear. We need to be free from anxiety. We need to be free from troubled relationships with other people, or we just don't rest well, do we? We want a Disney World life where everything is spotless and perfect. And we want happiness to abound. We want food in our belly. We want money in the pocket. We want a strong, healthy body, because if we got all that, life is good. And that's what most of us were experiencing when the economy of America was at its strongest and the jobless rate was at its lowest, and we had money in the bank and food in our belly, and life was good, wasn't it? And then the coronavirus hit, and the tornado season, and all this other stuff that's been happening. And all of that changed like that. You know what? It reminds me of something that happened several years ago. As my children were in their teenage years, I helped out as a Bible teacher and an elder at a church founded by Christian singer Michael W. Smith. And the Sites and the Smith families became very close during about a 7-year period. And we shared a lot of life together. And as Michael and I tried to lead the sheep as shepherds, we spent many hours weekly focusing on things that were related to the church and to our flock. And as the work drew us together in a common purpose, well, naturally our friendship deepened, and we did a lot of fun things together as well. I remember one such occasion when Michael called on the phone and he said, "Hey Jimmy, I'm coming over. I just need some back porch time." Well, back porch time around the Sites house means that cell phones are left off there or left inside the house, and we simply go out and hang out on this beautiful back porch in our rocking chairs overlooking a hollow. And we don't talk about work. We don't talk about church members' problems, and it's just off limits to do any of that. So Michael arrived, and sure enough, he left his cell phone in the car. And that's a very rare occurrence for him, and it is for me as well. So we walked out onto that large wraparound back porch there of our lodge. We have these woods that are filled with all kinds of birds and some wild animals that occasionally come through. It was one of those beautiful spring days. It was perfect. And we sat for 2 hours just enjoying casual conversation. We were sipping coffee, our feet were propped up, we had sandals kicked off. I mean, it was then that I had this thought that kind of took control of my mouth and made it morph into a smile. I thought this: I am sitting on the back porch of my dream home, a big log lodge. And the amazing Christian artist, Michael W. Smith, is sitting here with me, sharing life as one of my dearest friends. And I have a beautiful family. I'm involved in a great ministry. I have a healthy body and plenty of food in the freezer. I mean, life couldn't get any better than this moment. And I just sat there and relished that thought for a few minutes and was just thanking God. And from the look on Michael's face, he was about as relaxed and laid back as I've ever seen him. This back porch time was good for both of us. Then it happened. Like a tornado that just blows in out of nowhere, like this virus that's been secretly waiting on the moment to reveal itself. It happened. Our cat that was lying on the chair next to me was purring contently. You know how they get their motor going? Well, all of a sudden, that little cat began to cough. And the cough quickly turned into this hack. It was a choking hack. And Michael and I both were turning our attention to it, and we were at the same exact moment we said, whoop, hairball. And we watched with curiosity to how this is going to play out. Then all of a sudden, as if a dam broke inside the cat's throat, this vile spray of purple liquid and goo just came gushing out of the cat's mouth and onto the floor of our porch. And Michael and I instantaneously just recoiled on our chair. We were lifting our feet as if they had been the targets of this devilish cat attack. And the surprise of the moment caused this simultaneous laughter in both of us. And I don't know why cats and hairballs tickle the funny bone of men, but ours was tickled. And we were kind of belly laughing there on the back porch, probably out of more unexpected shock than anything. To say that our perfect bubble of an afternoon had been cracked, well, that would be an accurate statement. Then it was shattered. Jack, our dog that you met in lesson 2, he was just a puppy at the time, and he'd been lying near Michael, contentedly sleeping the afternoon away. One of those sunshine naps that dogs love. I mean, there's nothing like the serenity of a sleeping puppy. Well, that sleeping puppy was awakened by the commotion. And when he saw that demonic spray of yuck hit the floor of the porch, well, the dog brain took over, and it said, snack time. Everything went into marshmallow time as Michael and I noticed Jack get up and begin to make his way over to that vile puddle. And our vocal cords went into slow motion action as we both were yelling, no. It was as if the word was made out of molasses and it just couldn't get past our lips. And we scrambled up out of our chairs. We were going to get off that porch as fast as we could into the house. But it was like we were being held back by these invisible giant rubber bands, and we were trying to get away from our seats. Get me out of this daymare as fast as I can. We finally made it to the safety of the inside room. We slammed the door to the shattered bubble of our beautiful sunny afternoon in the hills of Tennessee. And I doubt that either one of us will ever get that image out of our brain. That right there is how quickly perfect contentment can turn into complete chaos. You ever experienced that? I mean, that pretty well describes life, doesn't it? How quickly things can change. And that's what we fear the most, isn't it? The unknown, the unexpected, the sickness of the coronavirus, the economic situation of the recession. What's going to happen? Well, I don't have the answer to how to prevent or cure the virus. I wish I did. I don't know how to detect and to dissipate tornadoes before they form and hit. I wish I did. I don't even know how to prevent fur balls from ruining perfect back porch moments. I hate being sick. I don't like having my schedule disrupted. It really discourages me when I finally start getting ahead financially and then have the rug of financial security pulled out from underneath me. I don't like uncertainty. I'm sure you don't either. I much prefer to have everything running like clockwork. And I don't like it when the world feeds on fear and ends up in a frenzy. And that fear sinks its fangs into all of us at some point or the other, doesn't it? So what is one to do when contentment turns to chaos? Well, that I do have the answer to. You turn to the Good Shepherd. Did you know that peace is probably the most sought after commodity on earth? People look everywhere for it, and they try anything to secure it. Well, I got news for you. If you want the peace that passes all understanding, you look no further than the Good Shepherd, Jesus Christ. Joy is another of the most important sought-after commodities, and people are constantly involved in the pursuit of happiness. Trillions of dollars are spent to try to purchase moments of joy. And so many of us live with a contingent joy. In other words, if we get the parking spot that's close to the store, then we're happy. But if someone cuts in front of us and takes it and we have to park 50 yards further out, man, we get really irritable. Our joy is robbed. Well, you know what that means? Our joy is contingent upon things going well. But if things go bad, there goes our joy. We don't have to live that way. If our joy is the joy that's unspeakable, mentioned in the Bible, then the physical things of this life, such as the tornadoes and viruses and hairballs and losing that parking spot, cannot rob us of our true joy. That joy is based on the Good Shepherd taking good care of us, Jesus Christ. That's when it becomes a contagious joy. That's what you want to have in your environment that's contagious. I think it's almost ironic that I would suggest that we focus on Christ when Jesus Himself, though, dealt with so many tornadoes and viruses and hairballs in life. All you got to do is look at just 3 different scriptures about Him. Isaiah 53:3 is one of those. It says He was despised and rejected by men, a man of suffering who knew what sickness was. Think about that. He was like someone people turned away from. He was despised, and we didn't value Him. Or Hebrews 5:7. During His earthly life, He offered up prayers and appeals with loud cries and tears to the one who was able to save Him from death. And He was heard because of His reverence. That verse is talking about His lifetime, not just the night in the Garden of Gethsemane when He was crying to the point that sweat and blood mixed together because He had a mild form of hematidrosis, going into shock because He had so much anxiety going on. It caused His brain to swell and burst the capillaries in His head and make some blood come out. It's not lethal, but it does happen to some people. It shows how anxious He was. Well, that happened a lot in His lifetime. I don't know if He actually bled out of His forehead, but He got anxious about what He knew was coming down the road. And He, on many occasions, was asking God, please prevent that, but Your will be done. And God's will was done, wasn't it? Wow, He dealt with a lot of storms and viruses and hairballs, didn't He? Here's one more verse, Luke 22:39-46. He went out and made His way as usual to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed Him. When He reached the place, He told them, "Pray that you may not fall into temptation." Then He withdrew from them about a stone's throw, knelt down, and began to pray. "Father, if You're willing, take this cup away from me." What He's doing there is referring to the cup of Socrates, most likely, the cup of hemlock that Socrates drank, which killed him. So that's a metaphor that had been around for about 300 years. That people would use to refer to death. So take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but Yours be done. Then an angel from heaven appeared to him, strengthening him. Being in anguish, he prayed more fervently, and his sweat became like drops of blood falling to the ground. When he got up from prayer and came to the disciples, he found them sleeping, exhausted from their grief. "Why are you sleeping?" he asked them. "Get up and pray so that you won't fall into temptation." My wife painted a beautiful rendition of that scene. Notice that the disciples are there, the 3 disciples. There's Jesus with His back to you, and He's looking out over the Kidron Valley toward Jerusalem. And if you look really close, way down there in the valley, here comes the mob led by Judas. Well, guess what? There are 4 disciples in the painting. There's a 4th person there besides Jesus and the 3 that the Bible mentions. Who do you think that is? That's you. Did you stay awake? Are you staying awake? Are you really, truly walking with Christ? Yeah, I love that little thing in Amanda's painting. One thing for sure, Jesus fully understands in every way what we're going through when our contentment turns to chaos. And in the midst of the storms, He reaches out His hand to us. He offers us salvation. I don't mean that He removes every bad thing that could possibly happen to us in life. I'm talking about the offer of salvation from our sins. And we talked about this in-depthly in Lesson 2. That's good news. Even in the midst of the most tragic of circumstances on this earth, we have eternal security that cannot be taken away by anything on this earth. And we have the peace that passes all understanding, that no matter what hits us in life, even to the point of death, we're sealed as God's own. We have joy that can't be described with words because our joy is not contingent upon health or wealth or a perfect back porch bubble in life. And all of this is based on one thing and one thing only, that Jesus Christ, the Good Shepherd, is our Lord and Savior. And in Him we find, are you ready for this word? Rest. Rest. Think about Psalm 23, verse 2. Starts in verse 1, the Lord is my shepherd, I have what I need. He lets me what? Lie down in green pastures. He wants us to be able to relax and rest in His will, just as He rested in the Father's will, though He had to face many, many storms. I know that we have a lot of tensions in life. There's no doubt about that. Let's just face it. We're experiencing tensions of various relationships with friends and coworkers and neighbors, even some family members. We have those aggravating, pesty, nagging circumstances of life, the breakdowns of equipment and the sickness and the decreasing income, our aging body, upcoming taxes, monthly house payments, car payments. You got weeds in the flower bed, tears in the clothing, and just disappointments, all the never-ending to-do list, all these things. And you know what? We complicate things because we have a lack of spiritual nourishment. A lot of times we don't even spend time in the Word. We don't even spend time in prayer, and then we're gorging on all this unhealthy worldly diet of junk from TV and music and everything. So we're kind of unhealthy, aren't we? So what do we do? What do we do? That's the big question, isn't it? Well, here we go. You ready for this? We take a deep breath. I actually want you to do that with me right now. We're going to just take a deep breath together. Here we go. Now, here's the next thing. We're going to open our eyes. Open your eyes to take a good, long look at the Good Shepherd. I want you just to see Him. I want you to open your ears and hear the Good Shepherd calling your name. And I want you to relax in the arms that are reached out to you. And by the way, there are nail prints in those arms. And He just wants to take you and hold you in His arms. And guess what? It's okay to just spend some time in the arms of the Good Shepherd. It's okay to just take a nap in the grass. The other day I was out filming some turkeys, and I called in this particular hen, and we were on the edge of a little cornfield that had been harvested, and there was some pretty green grass there and a food plot. And I'll never forget, that little hen came in and she saw my decoy that's made out of plastic, but she wasn't smart enough to figure out it wasn't a real turkey. I guess it looked real enough and I was sounding real enough that she thought it was real, and so she just decided to lie down and take a nap right next to that decoy. And it was so cute. My wife and I were in the blind and we were just watching her and filming her, and she literally was talking and calling. I don't know exactly what she was saying, but she was very content. She was lying down in green pastures. That's pretty neat. I think all of us need a quiet place for rest, and guess what? Though God didn't cause the storm of the coronavirus, there's no doubt He can take it and make something awesome happen with it. So in other words, while there's a downside, one of the upsides to us being stranded in our homes and away from our work and out of our schedules is that we might actually have time to rest, to not be bouncing around like ping pong balls, like popcorn in a popcorn popper. I have a very dear friend that is an artist who goes out and does a lot of concerts. And I saw her the other day and she said, you know, Jimmy, if I never again get on a bus, I couldn't be happier. She does 250 concerts a year. And she's getting to stay home and have a normal routine for the first time in her life. And she has 3 children she's getting to spend a lot of time with. I think there are some beautiful blessings in the middle of all the chaos and the troubled times that we're going through. And this concept of rest is one of those very special lemonades made out of lemon. Now let me show you how important it is by showing you an example of the Good Shepherd Himself taking a rest. Wait, what? Jesus needed to rest? Let's read it. In the Gospel of Mark, specifically chapter 6, there's an amazing story. The apostles had been sent out by Jesus 2 by 2 to go into all the villages and teach the gospel, and He gave them directions, and they were to make sure that they did it exactly as He said. And when they got all done, they came back to Him and they wanted to report it. They were so excited about what was happening. And we read about this in verses 30 through 32. The apostles gathered around Jesus, and they reported to him all that they had done and taught. And then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. Now let's kind of look at that for a moment. The disciples were excited. I mean, they'd been out healing and teaching. Great things were happening, and they were smack dab in the center of it all. They were reveling in the fact that they felt useful in God's service. They were actually getting results without Jesus being anywhere around them. They were beginning to sense something of the Spirit and the power of God, and they couldn't wait to get back and tell Jesus all that they had done. Can't you just see their faces? Can't you just imagine the twinkle in their eyes and the increasing pace of their steps as they approach the place where Jesus is working? And finally they reach him, and every man begins simultaneously on top of each other to tell of his experiences. And Jesus, probably with a smile on his lips, has to calm them down. Wait, one at a time, guys. And he directs them to speak. And Jesus probably very patiently listened with great joy as he heard each man's story. Well, finally, the reports were all given. And we expect to now see Jesus pat each guy on the back, give them a great pep talk before sending them back out to continue their mission, because after all, we only got so much time. You got to get it done, right? Strike while it's hot. But this is not what Jesus does. What we see Jesus doing next is probably one of the most overlooked, swept under the rug principles in the Bible. It's a principle that's needed in our modern culture possibly more than any other spiritual discipline. Jesus said to the disciples, "Come with me to a quiet place and get some rest." Wow. In these few words, Jesus taught his disciples the important place of self-care. His conversation may have gone something like this: "Fellas, you need to eat and you need to rest. You need some quiet time. Yeah, it's exciting to be involved in work and ministry and get things done. It's exciting to see results, but don't forget you're human. You have limits and needs that should be given some attention." Think about it. God designed our bodies and our souls with a need for rest and quiet. We got to take regular breaks that allow us to step back far enough from our work so that we can regain perspective. We need to spend time away from the crowds so that we can commune with God and do some spiritual self-evaluation. I mean, literally, I find myself moving through life with such a distraction that I don't even take the time to sit back and reflect quietly and rest and wonder if all the things that I think and say and do are worth thinking, saying, and doing. I mean, a lot of times I'll go along with all the must and the oughts that are hurled my way by a society that's just totally out of control. And I'll accept them as if they're authentic translations of the gospel, you know? And as a result, I become overstimulated, overcommitted, and overloaded. I'm busy, just like all the other busy people, so that I can be rewarded with the rewards that are rewarded to busy people. So here's a big question for me. Maybe it applies to you too. How has this busyness affected me? Get in the car? Can I just drive in quiet? Or do I have to have the radio turned on? I'm at home. Do I have to have the TV blaring? Can I even be in the room without noise? I get in an elevator. There's got to be music, right? There are churches that will serve communion and they feel like they've got to just constantly be providing noise through the whole thing. Can't people just sit and reflect in silence? It's almost as if we have 5 seconds of silence anywhere, and especially in church. Then we get to feeling very awkward. It's like sitting at a dinner table and there's a lot of people around and we're all having a conversation, but all of a sudden there's a lull. You ever been in that situation? For 5 seconds? And everybody's like thinking about, what can I say? What can I say? As if we can't just sit in silence. There's a very famous spiritual writer known as Thomas Merton. I've read several of his books, and he compares our modern society to a shipwreck from which each single individual person has to swim for his or her life. To let oneself drift along, passively accepting the tenets and values of what's known as society, is purely and simply a disaster. We are just too busy. Even in the church, I know pastors that say, you know, we got to keep our people so busy doing good things that they won't have time to do bad things. Ooh, that's probably not good. Maybe instead we all need to relearn the spiritual discipline of just being still. Quiet rest in a green pasture with the Good Shepherd nearby. After all, that's what Psalm 23:2 says. It says, He lets me lie down in green pastures. When I was a young minister, I was around 17 years of age when I went to college, and I was preaching on Sundays at a little country church in Enola, Arkansas. And on the very first Sunday that I went there to preach, I walked in, it was a good 30 minutes before church, and there were 3 or 4 elderly people sitting in there in this little country church on a dirt road. And I walked in and said, "Hello, how you doing?" And the person kind of looked at me and just shook their head. And I looked at them and went, "Hey, how's it going? Good morning." They just went. I was like, wow, this is strange. And I sat down, and some other people came in, and I'd turn around, "Hey," and they'd just nod and sit down. And they just sat there. Just sat there. Boy, did I feel odd in that situation. But here's what I learned. These country folks were farmers. They took care of cattle and chickens and farms, and they were super busy during the week. They were like shepherds. But when it was time to go and worship the Lord God, they wanted to get their mind right. They wanted to get to the church building early, their sanctuary area, so to speak, and they wanted to sit in silence and just forget about all the distractions of the world and prepare themselves to go into the throne room of God. Wow, they taught me a lot. And I think it's something that you and I need to be doing on a daily basis. I know I need to. I even have written about it, and sometimes I don't even follow my own writings. In a book I wrote called Into the High Country, I wrote a whole chapter called Sanctuary. Matter of fact, you can get that book on my website at jimmysites.com. There's a little plug for a book. Hope you don't mind. But I think I need to go back and read that chapter. I've been too busy. But getting to stay home and not be out doing all the speaking and the filming and all the stuff that we do has been a real blessing to me, because solitude is very important. And just good old private time with God is crucial. And reflection on one's own inner being and relationship with God is of utmost importance. And these are the things that we can do when we're lying in the green pastures with the Good Shepherd. Take an inventory of your own life. Are you having some good naps in the green pastures with the Good Shepherd? I hope that you are. And if you're not, how can you change your lifestyle so that you can be obedient to what God wants for your life, to enjoy some of those good old naps in the green pastures? Let Him work with you. Ask Him to help you. May God bless you. Thanks for listening to this lesson. I'll see you for lesson 4.